I don't like talking to people. Which is a strange thing for a talk show host to say, but it's true. The thing is, I don't like talking to people in person. Voices on the line are different. They can't see me, I can't see them. It doesn't make me anxious the way face-to-face does. So, I've been working the Midnight Regret line for years, and rarely interact with anyone outside of it, which makes me happy. People sometimes call just to get things off their chest, and it helps them if I listen. Most of them, though, want advice on how to handle their regret. The secret to giving good advice is pretty simple, and I worked it out early on. There are 3 keys to it. I have 2 staple pieces of advice, which I redress in language appropriate to each situation. The first one is, the only actions you can control are your own. Whether I'm explaining that you can't stop someone from divorcing you, why your kid hates you now, or why you can't love someone into getting over an addiction, it all comes down to the same thing. You can't control other people. Your responsibility is for your own actions and choices. The second one is for problem solving. Apply the scientific method, basically. That's the best way I know how to solve problems anyway. Most people don't know it, so I explain it in terms they can understand, and coach them through a couple of applications. The third thing is to just listen. Really listen. People want to be heard, and I'm good at that. It's why I'm good at weeding out the fakes, and why people usually end the call feeling better. Some nights are quiet and I play music or talk. I tell them often that anyone can call. It's okay if it's not something big, or if it is. If it's criminal, the recording will be passed on to the relevant authorities, but we don't do more than that. Sometimes kids call, or old people. Most people don't listen to them, but I do. I like to think I make them feel safe. This one night started like any other. I talked an old woman through rebuilding her relationship with her daughter, and a young man through a bad breakup. Then nobody called for a while, so I played some Vivaldi. Then the voice came on the line. A deep and very beautiful voice. It was like talking to Idris Elba or Christopher Lee, but with a hint of melodious accent that I couldn't place. I suppose, it said, and it sounded so sad that my throat tightened in sympathy, that my greatest regret is the breach with my father. I was disowned, cast out. I never meant for it to go that far. I didn't want to never see him again. I let my sympathy soften my voice, relaxing into my chair. Your voice shows if you're tense. I'm sorry, caller, I tell him, meaning it. Losing contact with your family, for whatever reason, always leaves a wound. A wound, yes, that's the right word for it. A wound that never heals. I hear the faint click as he shifted the phone in his hand. And he will never forgive me. He sounds so certain of that. It's sad. Caller, do you want to talk about what caused the breach? You don't have to. Only talk about the things you want or need to talk about. I will. He hesitated, then sighed. I've never talked about it. Not to someone who didn't already know. Forgive me if it's not very coherent. That's fine. It can be hard to put such intense emotions into words. Intense emotions, yes, an understatement, but yes. He laughed very slightly, a huff of air that was as much relief as amusement. I didn't think it was a big deal at first. He was Oh, it's hard to explain. My father has always been autocratic. He didn't care to have his decisions or his judgment questioned. And he had favorites. Once I was one of them. The voice had turned sorrowful again. And then I argued with him. I told him he was wrong to his face. I sighed, recognizing the theme, if not the details. I understand some people don't handle disagreement well, and sooner or later we all tell our parents that they're wrong. It's part of growing up. Growing up, yes, it was something like that. I wanted more independence. Free will, you could say. I believe, he added, with a sudden note of passion in his voice, in free will. Without free will, there is no good or evil, there is no choice, there is only servitude. I nodded. You're so right, I told him, because it happened to be something I felt strongly about too. Caller, do you listen to my show often? Sometimes. Then maybe you've heard me say this before, but it's always worth saying again. The only person whose actions you can control is you, because that is the essence of free will. You have absolute control over your own choices, and none whatsoever over anyone else's. So I have always believed. He seemed pleased that I agreed with him. For good or for ill, we must all make our own choices. That's right. Some people took that the wrong way, though, so I kept going. All you can do, all you can ever do, is make your own choices as best as you can, and accept the consequences of those choices, whatever they are. Your argument with your father led to your estrangement, right? Yes. Suddenly the voice was guarded. Did you express yourself honestly? Really tell him how you felt, and what you genuinely believed to be true? Yes. Then I don't think you should regret that, I told him gently, wanting to reassure him. Even if you look back now and think there are things you should have done differently, if you, at the time, meant what you said and believed it to be true, then it was probably something you needed to say, whether he wanted to hear it or not. Even if you think you were wrong now, it was true for you then. You shouldn't blame the younger you for not knowing everything you know now. There was a long pause on the line, but I didn't rush him. People need time sometimes. I hadn't thought of it that way, he said slowly. But you're right. You are. I was so young and sheltered before that happened. I didn't know then what I know now. That's something I hear a lot. People tend to look back on the things that happened when they were children or teenagers and think, oh, I should have done this thing instead, without taking into account that they may not have had the knowledge or understanding then to realize that the alternative even existed. Your judgment changes so much as you age and gain knowledge and experience. You may look back now and think, I wish I hadn't said that, but at the time, maybe it was something you needed to say. His voice broke, and for a moment there was sudden hissing noise on the line, and I wondered what he'd accidentally turned on or off or up to make the sound. I did need to say it. I was unhappy and angry, and I needed to say it. Wrong or right, at the time it was true for me. That's all that matters. I leaned back in the seat, resting my feet on my desk. Listen, if you really regret the estrangement from your family, you can always try reaching out to your father. At least asking if he's willing to speak with you. And if he refuses, that's his call. All you can do is think about what you want to communicate, about the argument and how you feel now, and decide whether or not you're ready to have that conversation. Then see if he is too. He cast me out, the voice said sorrowfully, and something in it this time sent a shock down my spine so intense I nearly fell out of my chair. I can't explain it, but I could feel the voice, the terrible sorrow and resentment and pain like the sun on my skin. I felt emotions for a moment far vaster than any simple human emotion. I felt the weight of aeons in it. The pain not of a decade or a lifetime, but of eternity. A pain that would never, ever be relieved. He cast me out, the voice mourned, and it was all around me as well as in my ear. And he will never forgive me, nor take me back. I was raised Catholic, though I broke with the church a long time ago. I knew enough to recognize those words and other things he'd said. My brain was trying to fly in some emergency common sense, telling me that I was hallucinating or dreaming or having some kind of bad trip. But I knew. But I also knew that here and now it didn't matter. The whole point of the show was that anyone could call. Anyone could talk to someone who would just listen to them. And this might not be a human anyone, but it was an anyone in pain, reaching out. For the first time since when? Ever? I couldn't fuck this up. Not for an ordinary person or someone else. So I swallowed hard and leaned back in my chair again. Caller, listen to me, I said quietly. I want to tell you about something that someone told me once. She told me that if I did what I was doing, details don't matter, then it would be too late to seek forgiveness. And that was complete bullshit. Because it is never too late to seek forgiveness. It can be too late to get forgiveness, because that's not in your control. The person doing the forgiving is the one who makes that call, but it is never, ever too late to try. No matter where your choices have taken you, no matter how much you regret them, it is never, ever too late to look back at them and think, I regret that, and I wish I hadn't done it, and try to make up for it. You may not succeed, but it is never too late to try. And listen, it is never too late to forgive yourself either. If you don't regret your actions, if you genuinely believe that you did the best you could, sometimes the person you need to stop being mad at is you. Really? Really. If you look back, really examine what happened then, and still feel like you were right, and the reaction was unfair, then that's okay too. A parent is responsible for their child in a way no one else ever can be. If you were wrong, he should have explained. He should have helped you to understand. If you were just hurt and angry and lashing out, he should have been willing to acknowledge that. It is okay to be hurt that he turned you away instead of trying to reach an understanding with you. And it's okay if you don't feel ready to forgive him yet. What you do need is to get right with yourself. Right with myself. The terrible ocean of sorrow was still there, but the puzzlement helped give it a little distance. "That's all any of us can do, dude." It slipped out, and I wondered if you got the red-hot pokers for calling the fallen one dude. "We're all alone in our own heads. Only you can decide what you've done that you're at peace with, and what you need to work on or make up for. Only you can decide which of those things are which. Listen, do you watch TV? You got Netflix?" "Yes." "There's this one episode of One Day at a Time. It's in season 2, where a character who's had a major break with her father, just like you, finally confronts him. And she tells him how much he hurt her by rejecting her, and how much she's learned about herself in their time apart. And at the end of that speech, she tells him, 'You're gonna miss a lot. And that sucks because I'm pretty great.' And look, I'm not a therapist, but that really spoke to me, and I think it might to you too. Whether your father will ever take you back, there's no way to know. But what matters is how you feel about you. About where you are and where you're going. I think your dad is missing a lot. Maybe he knows that, maybe he doesn't. But what matters is how you feel, you know? How do you feel about yourself?" There was another long pause. I don't know," the voice said, and now I could feel the confusion in my bones. "I think I need some time to think about it." "There's no hurry," I told him. "Take the time you need. I'll be here if you want to call again. Just take some time to think about not what your dad thinks of you, or your friends, or your enemies, or whoever, but what you think of you. About what you want to change and what you don't." "I will. Thank you." "I will. Thank you," the voice said. And I could tell he meant it. You get to know the different kind of thank yous you get in this job. There weren't any more calls that night, and I wondered if the listeners had picked up what that voice was broadcasting, the same way I did. I hoped not. That was a lot to drop on someone, and at least I was getting paid for it. When I left work at 3, a tall figure was standing under a street light outside. I couldn't have said what he was wearing afterwards. Something dark and muffling. But whether it was a coat or a cloak or dark wings, I still don't know. He wasn't hiding what he was, anyway. And I stopped out of arm's reach and met his beautiful eyes without flinching. Much. "Hi." "Did you know who you were talking to?" It was definitely the same voice. "Does that matter?" "It does." "Then, yes, I figured it out around Cast Out. You were..." I waved a hand. "You stopped hiding that you weren't human then. I don't know if you meant to." "Not entirely." He sounded almost hopeful. "Did you mean what you said?" "Every word. I've had that conversation a lot of times. Parents let a lot of people down." I folded my arms, it was cold, and looked up at him. He was well over 6 feet tall. And God, too. I was raised Catholic, and that didn't end well for me. The church isn't kind to people like me. I'm not inclined to take its word for who was wrong in your break with your father. He nodded slowly. "They told you you would be mine unless you denied a part of yourself." And they were wrong. Even if damnation is a real thing, which I'm still not sure I believe even standing here talking to you, I do believe they were wrong about me. I am a good person. I choose to do good every day, to help people, and nobody's decisions define me but mine. I was really glad I didn't have to lie. He was being friendly right now, but I had a strong feeling that lying to him wouldn't end well for me. From what I know about you, you've spent aeons defining yourself by what someone else told you that you were, or had to be. And that's a shitty way to live. What matters are the choices you make, not the ones other people make for you. I believe in free will too. He smiled, showing very sharp teeth. And if I decide to do something dreadful? Then that, sir, is on you, not me, not your father, you. Free will doesn't mean freedom from consequences. He laughed and bowed and disappeared. I called in sick to work for a couple of days after that, because no Catholic, however lapsed, handles a face-to-face with Lucifer well. So far, he hasn't called back. I don't know if he will. But I stand by what I said. Parents can be wrong, and the church can be wrong, and people who think they know all about you can be wrong. All you can do, really, is work on your own regrets and make your own choices. The world hasn't ended, so I can't have fucked up too bad. Last night, I got a call from a voice that rang like bells. She was complaining that her husband had left her, but her explanation of why involved 3 different trips to the netherworld, a bandit woman, and the ingratitude of the people of Mesopotamia who forgot their gods. Telling someone who's probably a goddess that she needs to really examine her own actions isn't fun, for the record. As far as I can tell, time stopped for that call and nobody remembers it but me. Something started with that first call. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think I need to brush up on more than one theology if I want to get through it.